I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Greenwood Advisory Planning Commission for Monday, September 23rd. First item of business is approval of minutes from September 9th. Is there a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Price,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Probst.
Yeah.
That's where the voice came from. Are there any questions or comments before we vote on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
One abstention.
Abstention.
Two abstentions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 with two abstentions. Are there any special requests or continuances? Seeing none.
Oh, there is one. There are two requests.
Do you want to handle them there, or you want to do them now?
We could do them now. And
Okay.
I'll likely take care of the old business.
Okay.
I'm a variety of law developers. I'd like to request a continuance on two old business items, PC 2024-035 and PC 2024-036 for Walker Commons. Some additional feedback at the TAC meeting on Wednesday that we'd like to have some extra time to address. We're requesting a continuance to the October 15th. 14th, sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Goradia? Not, I'll take a motion. The first one.
Well, do we have room on that? Is that fine?
Yeah, Gabe was aware of it, so. Mr. Nelson, we're okay with 14?
Let me pull up that agenda. I know it's longer, but I wonder if it was longer because I anticipated these being continued.
Marathon, right?
Oasis.
Steve and I don't let anything else go.
Thanks for bearing with me. I'm almost there.
You're quite all right.
So on that meeting, we have a zone map change, two waivers, and then we would have these two primary plats. So I think that's a
Seems manageable.
manageable amount.
Okay. So we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue PC 2024-035 Walker Commons North primary plat to Monday, October 14th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Stambaugh. All in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 8-0. So far as 2024-36, the southeast primary plat. Is there a motion?
I move to extend PC 2024-036 to the October 14th.
Motion by Mr. Lexi. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Milborn. All in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. Is there any old business from the floor? Seeing none. New business. First item is PC 2023-025 Anderson Hauser, PSIC, a waiver request. Not a public hearing.
Just push on the keyboard escape. Or minimize it, it is on the desktop.
Okay, thank you.
Just don't push the X. It's up at the top, right there. And IT, could you take control and use the share screen feature to share this with our virtual attendees? Over in that setup pertaining to this petition, just today I had some supplemental information that I would like to pass down. There are 2 sheets of paper here. Both pertain to this case. One second. Right?
Okay, so my name's Pat Stout. I'm with Rundle Ertzberger Associates. We're the site designer for the Enders Hauser project, representing Enders Hauser for this waiver request adjustment that we've had happen. So I just had a couple of exhibits to maybe bring you up to speed with where things were at. So if you recall, we had this western buffer approved a while back. And you can see kind of north-south property line, just right next to all the red circles there. And since then, there's been some developments to the Unicorp development, which is just west of the Enders Hauser property. And from that has come a new local road that's going to be north-south from Bushville up to Worksville. And because of that, there's a bridge that crosses over Grassy Creek, which essentially restricts the water flow within the floodway of Grassy Creek. So from that, they have to have compensatory storage, which means they just need to be able to store a lot of that water that's going to back up from the bridge that's restricting the water flow from the creek. So because of that, and maybe it's a little hard to see in this diagram, but because of that, you can see that they have a significant amount of grading that's going to occur on the Enders Hauser property site. So you can see that right basically in the middle of the image there is the north-south property line again. And so all that regrading would occur on Enders Hauser's property. So because of that, we would have trees kind of randomly in the middle of a detention area. So from our standpoint, it didn't seem to make sense contextually to have a line of trees randomly in the middle of a basin. So we are just requesting to essentially relocate essentially all those trees on that western buffer. Some of them you can see in the green are moving further west on Unicorp's property, and then there are a few moving east closer adjacent to the Enders Hauser building itself. So we have the same quantity, we have the same species, everything is the same. We're just shifting them around and think that it's more appropriate. One, contextually, given what we're dealt with now, but then two, not shifting everything over outside of Enders Hauser's property and still being respective of Unicorp's property as well. So Enders Hauser and Unicorp have already coordinated, and they have consent. Enders Hauser has consent to put those on Unicorp's property, and then they also have the maintenance agreement as part of that.
That's what you submitted to all of us.
That is what I passed out. Just today, we received a maintenance agreement. Full disclosure, I've not fully reviewed it, but it would be something that staff would want to look at And then they also submitted the owner consent. Both those documents came as the staff report requested those as conditions. They stated that they were willing to meet those, whether or not you guys cleared them. And they sent me those today.
Ms. Coons, has legal had a chance to
Nope.
review these?
I haven't seen any of this, so you'll have to modify your motion. Initially, it was going to be locating the trees outside the buffer area, so I still haven't seen a copy of it, so. Just bear that in mind when you approve it. Or just try to deny it.
I have a question for the petitioner. Is there a permanent pool or is it just temporary storage?
It's temporary, but we were told through Unicorp's civil engineer that it will be under several feet when it does flood, just because the regrading that they're doing, they're really fully back to banks of Grassy Creek. So taking that into consideration, the fact that it wasn't just, I don't think, a quick drain, that it will hold water when it does rain, that was part of our decision on making sure we get most of what we could outside of that. kind of
So
low
a
lying area.
semi-dry detention.
Yeah. It'll be dry when it doesn't rain. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the original staff recommendations is that we agree that the relocation doesn't compromise any public safety or anything in that area. But all of this maintenance agreement does is say that they have to pay to relocate, to maintain it, and that the landowner is saying it's okay,
Correct, yeah.
which should have been.
Yeah, staff just didn't want to be in a position where we were approving something that the property owner was not in agreement with. We assumed Unicorp would likely be agreeable to this because it is their regrading for their project that is impacting Henderson Hauser's plantings. However, we did want to have those documents. The maintenance agreement, at least from my perspective, would be an agreement between Unicorp and Henderson Hauser for future owners. If we wanted to, if someone wanted to propose a modification to that commitment, they may put a maintenance agreement between Unicorp and Henderson Hauser that is acceptable to the city of Greenwood, legal counsel or city attorney.
So this is something you're suggesting we would accept pending approval by Greenwood Legal?
You are apparently, again, I haven't seen what was distributed, but it sounds like it's modified to not locate the trees outside of their property. So it would be to adjust the tree locations along the western landscape to other areas on the subject property, and including some outside the buffer on Unicorp, and conditions subject to whatever these certain conditions are. So I don't know what condition you want to place on it.
I guess to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are going onto Unicorp's property. And some are relocated on Henderson Hauser's site, but there are ones that would need.
Correct. So, and initially, it was my understanding they were all going to go on Unicorp's property, but that's not true. They're relocating some on Anderson Hauser, and then some will be on Unicorp's property.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, because that's not what the initial was. I thought moving them all, adjusting them to area outside the buffer and the adjoining property.
And this new agreement is between Enders and the Florida CW family, who owns the other land with these obligations. So could we entertain a motion approving it?
Well, you'd have to make some kind of conditions on it. you know, approve this subject to whatever those conditions are, some kind of a maintenance agreement that's satisfactory to the City of Greenwood Legal Department or legal staff, I guess.
And we're not changing the buffer yard size, because that's mentioned here. That's staying the same, right?
It just specifies how big it has to be on abutting zones, and they are doing the 40 feet. It's just that some trees will be on their property, some will be on the adjoining property,
Some will be in the
and some will be in.
So we're really gonna need to say
Yeah.
to adjust the tree locations along the western landscape of the subject property to areas outside of the buffer and on the adjoining.
Other areas relocate to other areas on the subject property to areas outside of the buffer.
To adjust the tree locations along
It's subject to whatever conditions you want to place that on.
Yeah, I mean, I would take the conditions recommended by staff, it's just wording a motion here today. I'm gonna wing this.
Give it a shot.
I move that the request of Anderson Hauser Incorporated for a waiver of the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 10-03-06, landscaping and buffering I, that specifies a minimum 40-foot large size buffer yard where differing districts and zones abut, to adjust the tree locations along the western landscape of the subject property to areas outside of the buffer, on the subject property and on the adjoining property, where the subject CO property abuts CM property, due to the inundation of water from an off-site commercial development project that adversely impacts the buffer area be approved, and that the Plan Commission find that Anderson Hauser has met the criteria set forth by Greenwood Municipal Code Section 10-04-03K for the waiver, for the reasons set forth in its request for the waiver and as presented, and with the conditions that 1, a signed owner consent from Unicorp to relocate trees on their property, 2, a maintenance agreement between Unicorp and Anderson Hauser, and that those be subject to approval by the city's legal department. And Shauna, I hope that wording is right,
Should satisfy what you need.
because I don't know if I can remember what I said.
We have a motion by Mr. King. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Price. Any further discussion, questions or clarifications? Seeing none, all those in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign. Carries 8-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is PC 2024-034, it's 499 Bushville Road, a waiver request. The petitioner is Ms. Donna Smithers.
Good evening.
Give your name and address, I guess, for the record.
Donna Smithers with North Point Engineering and Surveying. Our address is 6125 Southeast Street, Indianapolis, 46227. And tonight, we're here representing Mr. Scott Miller, who's with me here tonight for a couple waiver requests on his property. I need to, can you help me here, neighbor? I need that exhibit that we have for sending that staff report. I have copies, I can hand them out.
If you could hand them out, we did not,
That's okay.
place the staff reports on there.
All right.
We also we can share. Yeah, sure. That's you. I'll get that out of the way.
Our request this evening, the first request is the buffer yard around the property. The ordinance requires with a fence, 30 foot. And as you can see on the site plan I just handed you, what we're looking at is reducing that with a fence again, reducing that to 15 foot. We'll still have the same amount of landscaping. The landscaping will be on the, outside of the proposed fence for the joiners to see. And we're meeting that ordinance requirement. As you can see, this is where Mr. Miller has his business, and he came in for a waiver several years ago, and we've been helping him bring his site up to the current ordinance requirements. So you can see on this site plan in blue there, we're trying to also bring the site up to, we're going through a review right now for drainage and water quality, and because right now this site does not have any of that on the site. So we've got an underground detention proposed. We're going to have a water quality structure, so we're going to be detaining the runoff from the site, improving the water quality. So that's part of, and you can see our detention is fairly large for this, and it would get into one of the buffer yards, and plus for the use that he has on the property and the need. So that's the request there for reducing that from 30 to 15 foot. And then our second request, we had requested a 6 foot high, I think the ordinance says an opaque or masonry fence. We were asking if we could do initially a 6 foot high, like a white vinyl fence. Staff, I noticed in the report, is not favorable of that. So one item we wanted to discuss and ask you about is the pictures that I gave you there, the very bottom pictures of the fencing. This was something that Mr. Miller had initially asked about or wanted to do, but this is a fence that is at the Public Works building, and that's being there right now. So he would like to do that. So what I'm presenting to you on the bottom part, not the top part like the wrought iron or regular fence, it's the one on the bottom end. So he went out and took pictures, and he said, this is what I would like to do. We'd like to get away from the wood fencing just for maintenance. It's just, we've got, I think it's almost 1,000 feet of fencing going around this property. And I personally would want a wood privacy fence to maintain around through there. So these are the items that we have, and if I could address any questions or concerns.
The fencing you were describing and its location at the Public Works Department, it looks like chain link fence to me with louvers, some kind of visual
Yes.
louvers.
That is correct.
That is
Painted, will yours be painted also?
It would be a black.
Okay. So it's security and it provides some screening.
Yes, and so with the fencing, that it'd be just like what you see here, but on the outside of the fencing, so from where the fencing is, the 15-foot, out towards the outer edge of the property, that's where all the landscaping will be. So the landscaping, the fence eventually, when you look at all the landscaping that's going to be placed on this property, I think it's gonna actually block, I think, some of the views of the fencing, which once it starts getting grown up and getting mature, you're mainly gonna see that landscaping and what we're proposed or what we're meeting with the city's requirements.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
One difference that I see on this is, and you're not talking about the wrought iron fence that's actually
Correct.
around DPW, you're talking about the divider between
Yes, sir.
the salt barn and the
Yes.
park.
Yes, sir.
One difference I see is that this is in the middle of city property all the way around. There's
Yeah,
nothing-
I totally agree. This
Yeah.
was just an example that he wanted to bring in front of you all of
Right.
what he would like to do on the property. Like we said, we started out with the 6-foot high, the opaque, the white vinyl fence, but staff wasn't favorable of that, so we thought we would look at this. This is only as an example to show you what he would like to do, nothing to do with how the city's using it. It's just a fence that he would like to put on the property, and then the landscaping.
Mr. Nelson, not to put you on the spot continually.
That's okay. Just for our staff's recommendation, or do you have a specific question? I'll have Kevin lead with staff's recommendation. I've got the staff report here, but I do have additional thoughts on the masonry or wooden fence subject.
Staff is in favor of reducing the width of the buffer yard, so long as all the landscaping that would be required with the 40 or reduced to 30-foot buffer yard is still in place, so.
Yes, sir. Yep. We agree with that.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a problem with that. A lot of the land right around there is not really buildable anyway, so that should not cause any issue. Yeah, with the fencing, originally, with the white vinyl, we were concerned about the integrity of a vinyl fence with the type of business. I believe the variance that was approved in 2017 required an opaque fence. And just looking at the picture, I am a little concerned that this is still translucent, I guess. The primary objective of the fence to be screening, essentially blocking off the inside from the outside. So I don't know that staff is in favor of this, although I think from a structural standpoint, I think it's a little better than vinyl. Concerned about the opacity of it.
But what about, like she said, there'll be landscaping on top, or like.
The fence itself is not a requirement for the property, like for property security or property maintenance. That's not something the UDO requires. The only reason the fence is going in is to reduce the buffer yard width.
The fence was required with the variance.
Okay, but it also allows them to reduce the buffer yard width.
Right,
The point
yeah.
still stands,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So part of the reason they're reducing the buffer yard width is because they're supposed to be an opaque, something you can't see through barrier, in addition to the landscape.
So they need the one to get the other, basically.
I would think so.
Yeah, what I would add, I agree with Mark's statement. The variance required them to have a fence that was opaque, which I share Kevin's concerns that what they're proposing is not necessarily opaque. But this is a buffer yard between zones that our Unified Development Ordinance designates as needing some type of a visual separation between them. This is an area where we do allow in other parts of the city there to be coated chain link fences for industrial properties. That's not something that we prohibit. But if you are going to use a fence for screening to reduce your buffer yard, it specifically requires an aesthetic quality of either masonry or wooden opaque fence. to reduce the buffer yard. So they are, and with this, they're not just reducing it by the ordinance required amount, they're reducing it even further. So I would be especially hesitant to provide a double waiver, one to both the distance and to the quality of the fence that we're requiring. And for that reason, staff was unfavorable of the proposed vinyl fence and also the proposed chain link fence with the screening.
Can you expand on the variance that was granted for this property?
There was I believe, use variance and a developmental standards variance granted 2017. One was for the use of the property. The dimensional variance, I believe, was for the use of the gravel. And it's trying to pull it up, but there were
Sure.
there were several conditions, one of which was the fence. I'm trying to think of what the other.
One of the
conditions were.
conditions was an opaque fence,
Yes.
so they're not just asking for a variance from our UDO, but also from the variance.
If the fence that they brought with them tonight to share with you is proposed, they would likely also have to go back to the Board of Zoning Appeals to have them modify a condition that was put on their property. I'd also say that this condition has been on the property for quite some time. There is, it is not in compliance right now.
I was gonna ask, I mean, procedurally, we really actually couldn't override the BZA. That would take another step for them to get to.
Yeah, the intent here is to have a lesser buffer yard, and we know it has to be an opaque fence. We were just asking, okay, could we do the white vinyl? And that's an opaque fence, that is a solid, but they're not happy with, they're saying that the construction of the material, I think they're very nice fences and they're very durable, but the ordinance does say wood or masonry. So we understand that. Our main concern is the buffer yard, and the other reason for the opaque fence and going with the white vinyl is maintenance. I mean, it's a lot easier to maintain than a wood privacy fence. So.
May I say something first?
Sure.
Speak for a second. Sure. I just, the wood, JD Byrider on 31 has a wood fence just like this that we're talking about, but the slats are kind of offset. It hasn't been stained forever. I mean, the board's worn. You can actually grab a panel and pull it off. I mean, the black chain link for me is more secure and safe, and I get the opaque. You know, I don't know if we can do more slats or the black chain link just looks commercial. It looks nice. It's gonna last forever. The wood fence looks nice the first day you put it up, but then like I said, you could easily pull the slats off. So I mean, I'm looking at it for security also. I mean, JD Fiber, I don't know if you've been by there, but everybody knows what wood fence is gonna look like in 2 or 3 years. It's just everything around me has galvanized chain link. I mean, again, I'm just trying to make it look nice, commercial. Like that, I don't know where the white vinyl came from, but I was always with the black. And that netting, I think that we're looking at, I don't know if the slats will, make that more opaque. I'm willing to do whatever. If we have to come back for that, I'm willing to do that too. But the wood fence to me is just going to be a maintenance nightmare for us, I guess. It's just not going to look very good.
With the level of, wouldn't the materials go back to BZA and not really be a plan commission conversation?
Probably.
The degree to which the fence is see through or not.
Under your UDO, in your landscaping requirements, if you are using a fence to reduce the buffer yard, materials are a plan commission issue. The BZA put a condition on about opacity, okay? The fence must be opaque. What does that mean? You can't see through it.
Or even if he
So,
has a 40-foot buffer yard, needs a fence,
You-
but because he wants to use the fence
To reduce the buffer yard,
he
the
needs
materials,
Okay.
you know, you can
the
specify
UDOs.
this is what it has to be,
UDO specifies what it has.
wood or masonry.
Right.
Correct. If you were to provide the full landscaping buffer and not reduce the size of the buffer at all, he could put up an opaque white vinyl fence. But since he is trying to use a fence to reduce the buffer yard, there are requirements with what that fence is made out of. And then, as Kevin and I have shared, we also, just with the nature of the business, we talked about the vinyl. Apparently, it wasn't vinyl, it's chain link. Chain link, coated chain link is fine in industrial areas, but it is not opaque per the variance, and it is not an acceptable material for a landscape waiver to reduce the planting area. So he's really running into two problems here, and sometimes when someone is running into problems with multiple different areas, I think the best, from staff, the best thing to do is to deny it and have them follow the ordinance.
So if I go back to the 30-foot buffer, I'm okay to use the black chain link fence?
You would have a 40-foot buffer, and you still have to put up an
You
opaque
still
fence,
need
because that's
an
what
opaque
you agreed
fence
to do
from-
with your variance.
From BZA. It's still required to be opaque.
If you want this approved, you put up a wood fence, you need a 15-foot buffer.
Or is it possible for him to seek a waiver for a vinyl fence? Because I understand wood it lends itself to rot.
Sure.
You have to, you know, take care of it, you've gotta stain it, you gotta do the things. Vinyl isn't as sturdy, but you do have to clean it. You have to clean it more often, especially if we're white. So, and I'm just knowing the Pushville area, that's not, you know, city, like you're gonna get some dirt in that area. So is that possible for him to seek a waiver for the type of material separate from this?
That is what one of his requests is. His first request is to reduce the buffer yard.
Second request.
And the second request, what was submitted to us was to use white vinyl fencing.
So we just have to, we have the ability to prove it, it doesn't have to go to the BZA as far as the
Unless he was using a material that was.
Material that is not opaque, then you would
opaque.
have to go back to the BZA, because they put the condition on it, to be opaque, and not supposed to be able to see through it.
Sure.
So, to help out, BZA is only worried about the fence is opaque. That's the variance there.
Yes.
So it would only go back to them if he doesn't put an opaque fence. What we're worried about is what is that opaque fence made of?
Yes.
Vinyl, wood, masonry,
And
chain link with slats, netting.
And the ordinance requires
We have to
Wood.
handle it.
wood or mason.
And just to clarify, slats are not permitted.
It's not wood or mason.
Can you do wood? I know you don't want to, but if we give you 30 feet, can you do the wood fence?
I mean, I guess if I have a choice, I'd rather do masonry. It's gonna cost me more, but. yeah,
There's
wood-
zero maintenance on, there's zero maintenance on the masonry.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'd rather do that. If that's my choice. You know,
I mean, that sounds like that's his choice.
Yeah.
That's what the ordinance says.
Either I'm doing wood or masonry to get to 15, and I'm okay with if there's no other option, then I'd rather do mason. Only issue I guess I have is I'm gonna have to put gates through here, right, to be able to get outside the fence to get to my landscaping, so that's an issue too, and I'm gonna have to put a gate probably on all three sides, so you have to put a gate through the masonry wall, so what do we do where the gates are? What material do I use to get through the fence, to get to my landscape?
Whatever they said.
Wood or masonry gate.
A masonry gate.
Or have you ever seen a wooden gate on a dumpster that is masonry? I mean, they make gates that
Yeah,
are kind of
Yeah.
opaque and
It's basically the same thing as a dumpster enclosure, but there's a masonry on three sides.
yeah, with what I see what you're saying there, wood, yeah.
15.
That's what I have.
So we'll go with wood or masonry on the
Okay.
site and with the approval, if we can get the 15-foot, get that reduced to 15-foot.
Okay.
So if we approve the first waiver, are you just withdrawing the second one?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep the code.
Other?
Is there any other questions or comments or insights?
This sounds right to me.
Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the request of Miller Family Investments LLC for a waiver of the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 10-03-06, landscaping and buffering, buffering, that specifies a minimum 40-foot wide landscape buffer at the perimeter of properties where industrial medium use abuts residential medium lot use and commercial medium format use properties. To permit reduction of the landscape buffer width to 15 feet with fence due to site constraints created by required storage, parking, and the proposed underground stormwater detention be approved, and the Plan Commission find that Miller Family Investments LLC has met the criteria set forth by Greenwood Municipal Code Section 10-04-03K for the waiver for the reasons set forth in its request for waiver and as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Lexi. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have one question. Do you have an example of a masonry fence? I mean, you'll have that, okay. I don't know, split face or smooth or what?
I don't think there's any requirements like that. Okay, next item up is PC 2021-035, Grove Crossing Senior Apartments. And the petitioner, I believe, is online, representing Crossroad Engineer.
Actually, I'm here, Judd Scott. I'm the arborist, and I think that's my name should have been on there instead of Crossroads.
That's fair.
And Kelly is on. I'm trying to get him to unmute. He's in Buffalo, so he may be getting ready for the game.
Hello, I'm on. This is Kelly with Clover Construction.
Okay, want to proceed?
Kelly, do you want me to go ahead?
Please.
Okay. I'm a consulting arborist, and Kelly with Clover called me and asked me to help him determine what needed to be done around the ponds. And as I looked at the landscape plan that had been proposed and accepted, it was taking out 46 to 60 trees in the north row and 21 and 26 trees around the ponds that are native. The ones in the north row are 40 to 60 feet tall. And I said, Kelly, why are we taking out beautiful trees to put in landscaping? And so that's where we are. I think we'd like to give you a better product with prettier trees than a landscape that was designed.
Okay.
It's a little bit different request because we're actually, I don't know if you can see the photos. I actually could share some photos of the trees around the ponds and in the north area. There's also a strange part of the landscape plans that says they were going to keep the native shrubbery, existing native shrubbery, and then it was taking out shrubbery and putting in new trees, and so our existing vegetation. So the landscape plan was a bit ambiguous in a couple of places.
There should be a share screen option. I believe that sharing is turned on if you would like to share any of the photos. And then if you'd like, Mr. President, I can provide staff.
Walk us through there. Yep.
Sure. This is the north row, and the landscape plan had all of these trees being removed and new 2.5 or 3 inch trees being planted. And if I can get to the next one, I can show you another one around the pond.
We could also add, Judd, that gets 600 lineal feet of 6-foot dog-eared western cedar fence as well.
And this is I believe this is the western pond. We're going through and we're taking out all the invasive junk, which is the Bradford pear, kind of the middle one right there in the front, and the honeysuckle, and there will be adding some shrubs and trees in there, but we're also keeping a lot of the gray dogwood, which are a native shrub, native tree, really. And there was a question about whether we could, you like a 6-inch tree. Well, gray dogwoods never grow to 6 inches, but they're a perfect little tree to be around this pond. And so I worked with Gabe and Alyssa and asked them if we could use clumps of gray dogwood. And so we figured out a 5-foot clump of gray dogwood would be equal to a 4-inch caliper tree. And so that's another part of the waiver. And I can show you this is another picture of the size of the trees that are along the back or the north line. These trees will be retained instead of the landscape that's going to be planted. And you'll see in the packet, there's an inventory of the species and the size and the condition. There are some that are not in good condition. Those will probably be removed as long as they're on Clover's property. And was a call to do a little bit of pruning for some deadwooding. It's along there, but for the most part, these are nice native trees. That's a hackberry and an oak tree in the middle. And that's I think what you all would really rather have there instead of some 2-inch trees, 3-inch trees that are going to be landscaped. And let me see if I can get you one more picture of one more pond. There's 2 ponds on the site. This is the trickier pond. It's the eastern pond. All the Bradford pears are being removed as we speak, and the honeysuckle, but the clumps in the middle, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that's the gray dogwood, and it's really a perfect planting to have around here. I don't think we really want to invite a lot of visitors, especially from the east, to make this pond too accessible for them. I think it needs to be more of a functional pond than a play pond. And then the other thing that was wrong with this landscape is that this whole row of trees right here are on the neighboring property, and the landscape trees were going to be planted as an understory underneath them. And then in this north corner, they were going to plant pawpaws, which in my estimation, they don't grow in the sun. They like the shade. And so that's our recommendation. That's what my recommendation to Kelly was, is let's try to get credit for the gray dogwood, and especially for these trees, the 46 trees along the back, the north line.
Just from staff does recommend approval of this variance. We encourage all of our petitioners to preserve existing trees, and they can count towards the landscaping. But as was stated, the dogwoods will never reach that 6-inch caliper that we require to count towards your quantity. So for mature tree and plant conservation, it does need to be in good health or be able to be bring back into good health. And it also does need to be that 6-inch caliper, which smaller trees sometimes will never grow to be that. Alyssa met out on site, reviewed the landscaping of the 2 ponds. They came up with a formula for preserving these kind of clumps of dogwoods that are native, as was mentioned. And we believe that would just be a huge benefit to these ponds and the people living there, to keep the existing things, trees, and not have these 2-inch, you've seen new landscaping, it starts out pretty small, so you keep the mature stuff there. So we are supportive of this variance, part of this waiver, and it is basically to concur with the landscaping that's been shown, that they've worked on. See, this is one of the more thorough ones we've gotten. They did a really good job of identifying the native trees on site. So we are favorable.
It's nice to see a developer wanting to keep mature trees.
Just flatten ground.
Not just flatten it, not just eliminate them and then put in little new twigs, but keep already viable trees.
One thing I would ask, if this is approved, that you get with your contractor early on and repeatedly. Back 8 or 9 years ago, I think Ms. Coons and I are the only two that would remember it overall in Emerson. There was a grove of trees that was part of a project. And a subcontractor accidentally bulldozed all of them over. So please get with any subs that have equipment on site. I don't know, maybe you put a wrap around each tree that's being started. I don't know what your inventory method would be, but just please make sure that the trees that are being requested to be kept are indeed kept.
Yeah, that is some, we've painted all the trees that we wanted removed because there's a typical thicket of Bradford pears. And so we're going to meet with the contractor again on Thursday and make sure that he got all the pears. We'll make sure that they're leaving it. But I think we're good on that part for this round of contractors. But I agree with you for the next round and then ones to come. Let's make sure that they don't think it's a gray dogwood's a cute little tree when it blooms, but it's not. Some people just see it as a little shrub or something in the way. So we'll make sure that that's known.
Thank you very much.
And the nice thing about the north boundary is it really will make this whole complex fit into the neighborhood like it's been there instead of a big complex on a flat piece of ground with little bitty trees around it. It's gonna make it look like Greenwood would like it to be.
Yes.
Allow the trees to have the same maturity as the residents of the apartments.
There we go. It's very, very true. And I might be included in that group, by the way.
It keeps Greenwood green.
I would accept a motion.
I move that the request of Clover Communities Greenwood LLC for a waiver of the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 10-03-06, Landscaping and Buffering E1, Mature Tree and Plant Conservation, that specifies that existing trees to be preserved on site must be greater than 6 inches in caliper measured diameter to count toward the requirements of the ordinance, to allow existing healthy, non-invasive 6-foot clumps of trees to count towards the landscaping requirements of the ordinance, because this would retain mature native trees, the character of the property, and significantly contribute to the landscaping. Be approved and the Plan Commission find that Clover Communities LLC has met the criteria set forth by Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 10-04-03K for the waiver, for the reasons set forth in its request for waiver and as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. King. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Milburn. Any last questions or comments or anything? Seeing none? Oh.
I got a comment. You did a really good job of evaluating what's on site and taking advantage of existing vegetation. So it kind of sets a standard. We'd like to see more of that in the future, hopefully.
So say it for parks.
Yes, sir.
Happy to do it for you.
I appreciate it.
That's the only way we do this kind of work.
Thanks all.
All those in favor, please show by raising a hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 8-0. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll see your team on Wednesday for the technical review committee meeting.
Perfect. Thank you again.
there any new business from the floor? Seeing none, are there any announcements?
None.
Okay. I'll accept one more motion.
Move to adjourn.